with Roe v. Wade overturned. As men, how do you feel? I typically consider myself a very conservative person on so many issues. Since the leak, I've been mulling this over in my head and found that I have many more liberal ideologies than I originally thought. Specifically these two: all healthcare is a right, all marriage is a right. I will probably find myself voting much differently next time around. I feel like this is the first step to control. Rights will be deleted one at a time, waiting to see who is going to step up to take care of the unwanted fetus when it arrives. Probably most will be taken, but the disabled and handicapped ones will go where? The pro-birth people should sign up for the imperfect babies. And why does pro-life only care about a fetus, but not all the neglected, abused, homeless, starving children already here who aren't taken care of? Don't their lives matter? Will women be imprisoned also for less than adequate prenatal care that's unaffordable for them? Women my age, and the vast majority of women today who are physically able to bear children, in fact, were born with the right to choose. That right was confirmed by the Supreme Court in 1973. I have a daughter who's just had that right ripped away. A bunch of old men, the majority of the court, made a choice for my daughter without her consent. They cited 17th century common law in favor of more recent precedent as the basis for doing so. They barely mentioned the 9th Amendment, which should have protected women from this act of oppression. The right to choose was an unenumerated right retained by women in this country until today, and that right, contrary to their opinion, does not have to be written down in a 235-year-old document to exist. Justice Alito, wallowing in his hubris, also failed to consider the context of the laws he was referring to. 17th century English common law severely limited the rights of single women and suspended the individual rights of married women in favor of their husbands' rights. That is, married women were not legally recognized as individuals with their own rights. Those laws he cited weren't addressing women's issues, but intended to protect the husband's rights. How the F do you think I feel? Live in Missouri, where a trigger law from 2019 will now take effect that not only bans abortions, but also effectively bans IVF fertility treatments. My wife and I are going through IVF now. So couples who are trying to actively bring life into this world that can't naturally do so because of medical problems will not be allowed to because of a law that is trying to preserve life. Edit. Our fertility clinic sent out an email to patients stating that they are finding out how exactly it will impact operations and treatments, since they don't know the exact implications of the law either. They are committed to providing fertility treatments including IVF in a legal manner. What's their reasoning for banning IVF? It's literally the polar opposite of abortion. As a married man with a beautiful little boy and another 90% complete, if my wife got pregnant again, and I had to choose between her or our unborn baby, I'd choose her in a heartbeat. I just gotta say, if I ever get pregnant again, I will no longer refer to myself as X weeks pregnant. I will say my baby is 50% complete. Buffering. For the people that are getting this confused with revoking an amendment, it is not. What it means is your local/state elections just got a whole lot more important. If you have a strong opinion on the issue, vote. Shift the power at the local/state level if it is a big issue for you. I lean towards states' rights over federal, but am also pro-choice in a red state, so voting based on issues, not affiliation, is as important as it ever has been. Genuine question, because I wanna understand the other side of this. Does this mean you agree with the SC's ruling because it gives states more power? Is the issue for people that states should have more power at the expense of bodily rights and privacy? This is also a right to privacy issue, which I thought lots of people in red states cared about. State rights is a slippery slope. The South claimed state rights to own slaves, tried to secede from the nation, and caused a civil war. I'm furious. I can't remember the last time I felt like this. I don't even know what words to use to describe it. It's like rage mixed with sadness and hopelessness. Hopefully this will be the impetus pro-choice people need to take RBG's advice and pass laws instead of expecting the Supreme Court to legislate from the bench. If only they could pass these laws by a simple majority vote. No Republican would ever vote in the affirmative. That's one of the main issues. In addition to limiting abstaining from voting to, let's say, 3 times a year, there also need to be term limits, so our country isn't run by senior citizens. If the president is limited to 2 terms, then the entirety of Congress should be 2. This might be an unpopular opinion, but I think government positions like this should be limited to 1 term. Even if the compromise is making terms slightly longer than they are now. I think a huge problem with our current system is everyone that's in power is focused on staying in power, re-election. I think that oftentimes results in nonsensical posturing, and that some politicians might be a bit more bipartisan on matters that don't necessarily follow party lines, since they don't have to worry about people not voting for them again. My wife and I aborted our first and likely only pregnancy due to extreme birth defects at 22 weeks. I feel very strongly about abortion, and don't wish it on anyone. That being said, I can't imagine what we would have gone through carrying that fetus to term, watching it die in the womb, stillborn, or best case scenario, extremely disabled with no quality of life. I'm so sorry to hear that, man. My wife and I went through a similar situation with our first pregnancy. Without a D&C, my wife would have carried our dead child to term and put her life at risk trying to give birth to it. This was a medically necessary procedure that may have saved my wife's life. I have no tolerance for the laws that the more conservative states are passing totally outlawing this. Edit, D&C, not DNC. I know this sub is for men, but I had to have an abortion to save my own life, and it's really good hearing these things. It's hard knowing they want me to die or be dead already. Guess I better set up that vasectomy appointment my wife's been hounding me to do. It is an ominous sign and a trigger for what is yet to come. Thomas said this opens the door for birth control and gay marriage. Why they want to touch birth control? These people are sick. I truly don't get it. Millions of unwanted pregnancies for people financially unprepared to shoulder. That just means a greater drain on the government and a weakening of the entire country. Greater than sign. Weakening of the entire country, which gives those in already existing places of power an advantage and carving up a weakened country even further. Gonna be a lot more dead kids, dumpster babies, teen girls with complications from illegal abortions. Doesn't seem very pro-life. They won't just be teens. Over half of the women who get abortions now are already parents. Yep, I'm a parent, and we had a scare a few months ago. That's rough. Just didn't want to leave the stereotype hanging there. Hope it's all good for you now. More unwanted babies will be born. They'll likely grow up unloved and uncared for. I see an increase in crime and health issues in a couple of decades. I don't like it. Not only that, but a greater financial drain on the entire system. More subsidiaries for prisons, more welfare, more Medicaid, more foster care, etc. Everything reprehensible about this truly immoral ruling aside, this will financially and economically weaken this country, with every single individual it keeps repressed and unable to climb out of the underprivileged hole they were forced to be born in. How optimistic of you to assume that the conservative states that ban abortion also provide welfare and necessities to children. It's actually about money. Our working class has the most power we've had in decades. If you bring an entire generation of poverty-stricken and desperate kids, they'll create a huge working class that will take anything they can get. Keep the cogs turning. Same thing I've felt over the last 40 years. Why is no administration passing national legislation regarding abortion and marriage rights? This has no place being in the Supreme Court. Not a single president in 40 years has even bothered sponsoring a bill regarding these. This is one of those I told you so moments. These issues shouldn't be with the Supreme Court. They were only placed there at first as a holdover, until national legislation could be passed. But national legislation not only has never passed, it's never even been presented. I'm seriously thinking that I should mention my vasectomy in my next Tinder bio before the news broke. I only said it as a sort of nervous joke, but now I'm thinking it might actually be a completely reasonable and beneficial thing to mention. Honestly, I'd definitely do that. However, don't be surprised if women still want you to wear a condom. They're the ones who are neck deep in the S. If you were lying, I'll want to wear a condom. 2. For STDs. Vasectomy plus condom equals 100%. As a man. Best. As a foster parent. F livid. There are literally millions of kids that never asked to be here, living their shittiest lives, and will probably never have a home, but sure, let's just add more to that. I'd say that it's time for these Republicans to start adopting/fostering kids, but I'm afraid of who they'd turn them into. That's the part that pisses me off the most. They give a rest about the child up until it's born. Then the child gets passed off to STI parents or STI foster homes, and are left to fend for themselves, and are completely forgotten about. People who are pro-life don't give a rest about them. They just want power over people they disagree with. I think America needs a Lysistrata month. Akira sex strike. Way ahead of you, man. I, female, haven't had sex in over years, but that's for a diff reason. Not happy at all. A president who didn't win the popular vote was able to shape the Supreme Court to a side that doesn't represent the country, and they overturned something a majority of Americans support. It all makes no sense. I feel very similarly to how I felt on 1/6, numb and sad. I live in TN and my wife and I were considering a move before, but now it's a given as we want children, and I don't want to roll the dice on my wife being given a criminal sentence or a death sentence for an ectopic pregnancy, knowing that the women in my life are now being treated as an underclass with decreased rights is deeply unsettling. Also, helplessness, even if we move to a blue state in self-interest. I know there are many who lack the means to do so, and I know that the more blue voters that leave red states, the more purple states will turn red. The slippery slope doesn't seem like such a fallacy anymore. As horrible as this is, we have only seen the tip of the iceberg in terms of what this court is willing to do. Within the next 5 years, this country will be almost unrecognizable from today. I'm 53 and already slipped, so abortion being outlawed won't affect me in a direct way. However, I have 2 daughters, one of which is 20 and the other is 18. I worry for their future. I have a 14-year-old daughter, and I feel the same way, scared to death of what is coming. I get the impression that a lot of people like yourself will be moving out of red states soon. Moved out of the states entirely in 2016. There hasn't been a day that's gone by since where I've regretted it even 1 second. I'm fact. Most of the time it's the opposite. News like this just reaffirms that we made the right decision to leave. I don't know what's going to happen to the US in the near term, but I'm not hopeful, and I worry for everyone who's still there. Angry. It's obviously a huge miscarriage of justice. Once again the minority voice in this country got its way, and as a veteran, I feel betrayed. My friends and I sacrificed to protect our freedoms. To have the highest court in the land pull this obviously partisan move makes it feel pointless. Fellow veteran here, U.S. Navy, I feel the same way. What the F was I even fighting for? Veteran checking in. This makes me so pissed, but I'm also terrified, because with that ruling they're inviting challenges to birth control and gay rights. What is wrong with people? Better question is, what is wrong with the Republican Party right now? Sick. Women have died because they couldn't get a medically necessary abortion. I'm also sick because my rights, marriage equality, it being legal to be gay, are next on the chopping block. All straight people should be alarmed, since access to birth control is also on the chopping block. Funny how Clarence Thomas conveniently left out loving vs Virginia from his dissent, since that would affect his marriage. Funny how Clarence Thomas conveniently left out loving vs Virginia from his dissent, since that would affect his marriage. Thank you for pointing this out. Funny how extremists are curiously progressive whenever it involves their own vulnerabilities. Noticed that as well. OFC, he leaves out the one case precedent that benefits him. Upset really. This has far-reaching societal implications that we will continue to see in the United States for the next 20 to 25 years if it isn't turned back. Also, as a kid I always saw the Supreme Court as this beacon of justice, equality and righteousness. S is decaying like the lifelong justices that sit there. Honestly, it's never been that beacon. It has been said that America has a fine legal system. Unfortunately, it does not have a justice system. Agreed. These are various courts over history. But it was Scottus that decided black people could not be considered citizens. Dred Scott. It was Scottus that upheld separate but equal. Plessy v. Ferguson. It was Scottus that upheld forced sterilization. Buck v. Bell. It was Scottus that upheld the internment of American citizens of Japanese descent. Korematsu v. US. This is horrible for everyone. Think about it. The government can force women to have rape babies against their will. If the government has that power, where will they stop? In Texas, the trigger law they set up will be activated in the 30 days. It doesn't allow exceptions for rape or incest. Okay, sorry, not a US citizen. Neither info. How can they justify that? What's that? You were assaulted. Well, put up with the child for the rest of your life. Are these people evil or brain dead? Yes. They think that the F clump of cells with no brain, no individuality, and can't feel anything including pain deserves more rights than a rape survivor. Corpses have more bodily autonomy than women, and the Supreme Court is mentioning that they are gonna rethink gay rights. This sucks. I feel really bad for women being discriminated against like this in my country. I will never understand these men who want to F everything that moves 8 days a week and then turn around and support banning abortion. It's absurd. These guys are half of the reason abortions happen in the first place. But personal responsibility is their kryptonite. Also, there are so many people out there who think I use birth control, therefore pregnancy can't happen. It's total BS. In real world usage, even condoms have a shockingly high failure rate according to the CDC. Perfect usage is a fairy tale. We live in the real world and we are fallible human beings. The effectiveness of hormonal birth control changes depending upon your weight and other factors. I've also heard so many stories about women in really bad pain from various forms of birth control. A lot of men have this mindset: you must suffer so that I may F your kind freely. Like even questioning the narrative about men spreading their seed or sowing their oats isn't the norm. Holy yes, other guys. Do you see how disgusting it is when we have turns of phrase that treat getting women pregnant like you're effing scattering seeds to the wind, and then you want to force the women to carry the burden of the consequences? Making something illegal doesn't make it magically disappear. It becomes more dangerous and risky for all involved. Prohibition doesn't work. F disgusted. My ex-girlfriend got an abortion when she was 22 and I was 27. I had just started chemotherapy and we didn't know if I was gonna make it. It would have been a terrible burden for her and I to raise a child and fight cancer at the same time. The child would have also suffered from the stress we were going through. It wasn't an easy decision to make. It was the right one. My wife went through an ectopic pregnancy and it required an abortion procedure to sort it out. Without that procedure she would have been rendered unable to have kids in the future. That was 6 years ago. We are now expecting our first in a few months. It really pisses me off that we are even having this conversation in 2022. I believe in my body, my choice, and will 110% fight for that. My opinion on it is that it's none of my business what another woman does with her body, and it should never ever be anybody's business other than herself. Never once has a woman having an abortion affected my life whatsoever. I mourn for my wife, my 1-month-old daughter, all my family who are women. It makes me nauseous that a rapist has more rights and protections than my 1-month-old daughter. F this government. F the Republicans who made this possible. F the Democrats who act like a bunch of pussies and refuse to play dirty like their political counterparts. The R's have cards up their sleeves and the D's just sit there and go, no please, don't do that, that's not right, please, I will not stand for this. All in all, I'm absolutely terrified of the country my children will grow up in. I personally feel that this is all BS and has nothing to do with morality at the moment. These people just decided to take away existing rights from millions of Americans, and that is not okay with me.